Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for taking time out of your day today to join DataCore Systems Automation Practice for our webinar on security vulnerability, why an independent view is crucial, and how to harness security automation for data and applications. This is the third in our series of webinars focusing on automation. Previously, we had webinars on automated machine learning and automated testing with DevOps. Keep an eye out for more of our upcoming webinars. A couple of logistical items for during the webinar. There is a chat function at the bottom right of your screen. Please use this to submit any questions you may have during the webinar. We have reserved time to answer as many questions as we can at the end. For questions we have not answered, we will respond via email after the webinar. Also, our webinar today is being recorded. So, as you all know, COVID-19 has presented us with an interesting and challenging time in history. As far as online security, it is important to note that the number of individuals online has increased, as well as the number of hours each person spends online. Forbes reported in March that COVID-19 pushed up internet usage by 50 to 70%. Data from June, published on medium.com, states coronavirus has led to a 47% increase in broadband data usage and increased gigabit and terabyte subscribers. These simple statistics are reason enough to reevaluate your online security. With that, I will introduce our panelists. First, Abhijit Chakrabarti. He is the IT practice lead, which includes our automation practice. Prabhasha Banerjee, Vulnerability Assessment COE Lead. Shruti Mukherjee, Vulnerability Assessment Automation Lead. Joydeep Banerjee, Database Security Tech Lead. And Preetha Mukherjee, Penetration Testing Lead. All of our panelists are a part of our automation practice. With that, I pass it over to you, Abhijit.
Thank you. Thank you, Amy. And thank you so much again, all of you, for participating in our webinar today. So I hope you guys read about us, you know DataCore. So only thing which I'm going to talk about is the new age automations, which is the very starting point of our today's discussions. Automation is nothing new. I guess we all know what is automations, and companies are doing automation for I think the period of 6-5 years at least, and RPA, robotic automations, automated testing is a very known word to most of you. But the context is different, the time is different, and now doing automation, is it the right steps, or what kind of automations we like to do, or what area of automation is we need? That's most important. And that's why in our new automation services, we talk about different types of automations. But every automation starts with a very generic steps, which we call the automation ROI assessment. So we always try to assess where you are as a company, what are your target in coming days, and then we propose that what kind of automation you should be doing, how much money you should be spending, what kind of tool you should be using. So having said all of this, we think that there are 5 areas which most of the companies are very interested to do automations. So one is hyper automation. Automated testing is a part of hyper automation. And then comes automated machine learning, which we had a webinar last month. You can always go to our site. We have it in YouTube as well. You see the Automate ML webinar. It has a lot of information that will be useful for you. And then comes the security automation, which is our today's topic. And then automated data management, like we are processing the data, but how can we set up an automated process to get everything done on time and expected? And the last one is robotic process automation, which is RPA, like that covers the business process. But today we're going to concentrate with security automation, and security testing and security automations comes together. We will talk about security testing first, but we will also highlight how we can automate a part of security testing or security assessment. That's the goal of today's session. I like to spend a few more minutes like talking about few important term or some idea, some topic. Like one of this is why cybersecurity is essential. You all know already why it is essential. But the point is, when it comes to business, we give very less importance on that. Even we did it 2-3 years back when we were working with the government projects, private project. It was not a high importance to us. Like we used to develop web portals, mobile app, database. We never thought about that we have to concentrate on security. But now you cannot ignore it. And it is the very most important thing to consider. I hope you already understood it. If you are not, today, our team member, our colleague will make you feel that why it is most important. So the vulnerability assessment, penetration testing, all this term is very important. But mostly what we all don't know, that we are already been compromised. That we don't know, because we are using a software and we are using a database, we are storing data, we are transferring data. Are we maintaining all this compliance? And compliance is a very important term in today's world. Like, I don't know whether you are aware of it. We learned a lot last 2 years, like compliance like GDPR, compliance like SOX, compliance like PCI DSS, well, transferring the payment informations, all are very important. If you do any project, any audit will happen and they will find out that you are not compliant. And now another thing is cloud. Whether you are working in on-premises, and cloud is very important. Earlier it was an opinion that, cloud is risky. Our data is going to cloud and on-premise is safe. Now, if you ask me, I will just say reverse. Cloud is safe. Why it is safe? In your office, say mid-sized company, you have a lot of network security engineers. How much trust factor, how much software you are using to protect your data? But think about Microsoft, Google data center, where they have many engineers and several protocols they follow. So that's why if you ask me, I will tell you cloud is safest place rather than your on-premises. And nowadays, as we are very experienced in Azure, specialized in Azure cloud, we see there are all kinds of compliance. You cannot have a SQL server in Azure without this kind of compliance like GDPR, PCI DSS, HICFA, SOX, you name it. So that's why this slide, like, you don't know, you are already being compromised with your data. And now after this session, you need to think about what are the places you should work with, either with us or somebody else, but you should fix the problem. Otherwise, you will have serious data breach or compliance issues in future. So these are some statistics. Some people already know that what is happening. The recent Twitter news, all you are seeing, but not everything can be solved by using antivirus. You need to know, you need to understand. There are issues with your own applications and databases, which is always ignored. You always think about, let me install some antivirus in our OS and that will cover everything. That will cover OS, but how about your applications? Have you thought about the application, what you have developed is fully protected, and the database? Like, we are saving data. I know there are a lot of people listening to me and using database, whether it is SQL Server, MySQL, and Oracle. Especially NoSQL is very risky, I'm telling you. Whether the companies like MongoDB, Couchbase are claiming that they are very security protected, to me, if you ask me, they are not like Microsoft or Oracle. Microsoft, Oracle has done a lot of things. Like, think about storing SSN, storing your bank account number, storing your name, storing your phone number. Phone number is very important. You have seen that any dual authentication nowadays, phone number is the very most important thing. So bank account, phone number, email. Go back to 5 years, and ask your DBA or developer. They never thought about like having a special treatment for the SSN field or telephone number field. Same, but now it's different. Those fields are treated separately. So now we need to understand in today's session, and that is, we will try our best to explain you what are the changes coming up in the security and what you can do, what kind of service we also offer to help you. So in today's talk, we will be focusing with 3 topics. One is web application vulnerabilities. As the term implies, I don't need to explain what is web application, but we will explain what are the vulnerabilities associated with the web application and how we can fix the problem. Then comes database vulnerabilities, which I will also come later to add few more things. And also you need to understand whether the database is on-premise in the cloud. Now we have a difference. And clouds, as I said, it's me. I am telling you that cloud is self-spaced on Earth right now, whether it is database or any application. And the third one is very important, which is business logic vulnerability. That is where data core comes in. I mean, we have investigated, we have researched a lot, we have played with tools, whatever available in market, whether Microsoft, third party, to address the web applications and database. But when it comes to business logic vulnerabilities, we found that the current tools are not properly equipped to track it. They can't actually. And business vulnerabilities, Purbash will talk about it more. We have a very limited time. I don't want to go into that because you will be listening to business vulnerability. But one thing you need to understand, this session is not only talk about security testing of application and database, but also it's a discussion where we will be talking and we'll be showing a small demo how you can automate the security testing process or a part of security testing process. And that part we will be showing business logic vulnerabilities, because I'm sure that most of you have already started working with the application database, but very few of you has focused or working with business logic vulnerability. And that is why we thought we'll put more focus on the business logic vulnerability so that we can help you, or you can come to us for additional help that we can automate. Why do we say automate? Like you have a single page and you are trying to find out a problem with the single page. That's fine. That can be done through a manual tester or a manual resource who has learned how to tackle it. But how about your big web application when you have 200 web pages? Who is going to check all those pages, whether the session cookie is protected or not, whether authorization is happening or not? That is the point where the automation comes in. So, and we like to focus more on the business logic vulnerabilities and how we can automate. So there are tools, there are our developer, the native coding, there are different approaches. So we'll be talking about one single approach today so that you get the idea. And if you need any help, you can come back to us. We can help you with setting up the automation of a business logic vulnerability. So before I end my pitch, I like to talk about that this is not something new that DataCode just started working on the vulnerability assessment and security testing and the automation. We have already completed implementation of this concept, what I have said, the web application vulnerabilities, database vulnerabilities, especially the business tool automation vulnerabilities in several projects. I have mentioned 3 government projects because nowadays federal and government bodies are very concerned, and we have seen that they will not tell you that this is live until you complete this security need of their requirement of their internal guidance. That's why I said, you know, testing something, but auditing another word, another is compliance. So now in every project you have to be compliant with some SLA or some guideline. So that is important. And these 3 projects is 3 different areas. One is a BI project, one is a completely web applications project, another is tax related project, which is very important. And those are all important information where you have SSN, EIN, phone number, all very important information where you cannot allow any data breach, any SQL injection kind of thing, any vulnerabilities. This is, you have to protect this. So we have experienced a lot from these 3 projects, and we are working on other private organizations with, and they are very satisfied with our approach. Let's take a pause and ask Purvasha to continue. I think we have a lot to share with you, to give you a lot of information about the way we should you should handle it, and we are handling it. Purvasha, back to you.
Thanks, Abhijit. Hello, everyone. This is Purvasha Banerjee. My thanks to all attendees for your valuable time. Security vulnerability assessment is a vast knowledge area. We will touch upon some of the types and process from our project experience and try to make the session helpful for the audience. Now we will be discussing about assessment scenarios. A vulnerability assessment is a systematic review of security weakness in an information system or application. And this review can be performed anytime as per customer requirement. We have experience in performing the assessments before go live and after go live. For some of the projects, the customers decided to be security compliant before their application are launched so that their business can be prevented from serious security breaches, information losses, and reputational damages which may cost thousands of dollars and weeks of hard work to get everything back on track. In this case, the detected vulnerabilities can be resolved before final production deployment, so the process is cost effective. Again, for some of the projects, the customer has already launched the application, but simultaneously wants security compliance before the vulnerabilities are exploited by the attackers. In this case, they need to go for frequent production deployment with security patches. So assessment after go live is costlier. Now we will be discussing web vulnerabilities. First, we have listed a few common web vulnerabilities which we'll be discussing now, and the associated risk we'll also discuss. The first one is SQL injection. A successful SQL injection attack enables a malicious user to execute commands in your application's database by using the privilege granted to your application login. For example, if your application login has privilege to delete some records, then without adequate safeguards, the attacker might be able to perform this operation. This is a dangerous area of your application. Next is cross-site scripting. The attacker aims to execute malicious script in the web browser of the victim by including malicious code. The actual attack occurs when the victim visits the web page or application that executes the malicious code. It is possible with all front-end scripting like JavaScript, VBScript, ActiveX, Flash, etc. Next is broken authentication and weak session management. It helps the attacker to forge user login and session data and gain unauthorized access to the web application. This is very dangerous for all the applications. Next is sensitive data exposure. This vulnerability occurs when an application does not have the mechanism to protect sensitive information like SSN, biometric data, health data, credit card or financial data. As Avijit explained, the unprotected sensitive data can be exploited by attackers. Another one is browser cache directory. Some browsers, including Internet Explorer, cache content accessed via HTTPS. If sensitive information in application responses is stored in the local cache, then this may be retrieved by other users who have access to the same computer from where the web application was accessed. So this could be also a vulnerable point for your application. Next is parameter fuzzing. When any web application allows submitting an invalid character in the URL or other user inputs, which causes an error in the database query or script execution, that means the application has not fully validated user inputs parameters. These errors can lead to other vulnerabilities like SQL injection or arbitrary code execution. Another one is security misconfiguration. This normally happens when a system or database administrator or developer does not properly configure the security framework of an application. For example, server OS is not updated with the recent patches, database has extensive user permission, etc. Next is missing content security policy header. Content security policy header is an added layer of security that helps to mitigate certain types of attacks, including cross-site scripting, data injection attacks, etc. So you can prevent that easily by applying content security policy header in the application. The last one is absence of anti-CSRF token. CSRF is the cross-site request forgery. It's a very common vulnerability. It's an attack which forces user to execute unwanted action on the web application in which the user is currently authenticated. All the functionality that's available to the victim can be used by the attacker. So this is also important for the application. Now we'll be discussing about web vulnerability assessment process we follow. We follow a standard process for web vulnerability assessment, and for that, at first we analyze the security requirements of the application, compliance requirements like GDPR, NIST, etc., and organization security policies. Then we work on identifying the types of checks and vulnerability scanning requirements. After that, we assess application vulnerabilities using web application scanner and manual attack techniques. As per requirement, we also use custom scan configuration and multiple attack templates to increase assessment coverage. We perform all required scan and then we evaluate the detected vulnerabilities from the severity classification like high, medium, low. After evaluation, we interpret the scan results with recommendation of remediation and create a plan of vulnerability mitigation. We repeat the scans until all vulnerabilities are remediated and no longer appear in the reports. We use normally Rapid7 Insight AppSec tool, which is a licensed version we have, and Z-Attack Proxy, which is an open source tool for web scanning. Now we will discuss the features of those tools in brief. Z-Attack Proxy, ZAP, is an open source penetration testing tool by OWASP to run web scans and find vulnerabilities in the applications. The tool penetrates through the site, hits the URL, scan the URLs hit, then check how prone is the site is to various risks and attacks. Different scanning modes like safe, protected, standard, and attack are very helpful in ZAP. We can also use different attack types like quick attack, traditional spider attack, Ajax spider attack, and active scan. Scan results reports can be generated in various formats like HTML, XML, JSON, etc. Identification of vulnerabilities like absence of anti-CSRF tokens, application error disclosure, cross-site scripting, etc. are very powerful in ZAP. Another one is Rapid7 Insight AppSec. This is a part of Rapid7 security suite. This tool provides dynamic application security testing by automatically crawling the web application and very powerful in identifying vulnerabilities like SQL injection, JavaScript memory leak, SSL strength issues, etc. Insight AppSec helps us to identify, manage, and fix application vulnerabilities with quick setup, intuitive workflows, app portfolios, live vulnerability view, and attack replay. It also allows us to generate summary and detailed vulnerability reports in HTML or PDF with risk classifications like high, medium, low, and informative. In the Insight AppSec report, the recommended solution for the identified vulnerabilities is also very helpful. With that, we complete web vulnerabilities, and now we'll discuss on database vulnerabilities. For database vulnerabilities, we have listed few types which are kept plaguing many organizations for years. The first one is default blank, weak name, weak username passwords. A very good step toward a better security, database security to remove default blank and weak login credentials. Attackers usually keep track of default accounts and use them whenever they have a chance to hack the database. Next is SQL injection. When your database platform fails to sanitize inputs, attackers are able to execute SQL injections similar to the way they do in the web-based attacks. These attacks allows them to elevate privileges and gain access to a wide spectrum of functionality. Next is extensive user and group privileges. Most of the organization provides DB user direct access and privileges, and it's very difficult for the DBA to monitor individual user access. These uncontrolled access privileges may cause security issues in the database. It's always recommended to make individual user a part of groups or roles and administer the rights based on that. Another one is privilege escalation. It's a common vulnerability that allows attackers to escalate privilege within low privilege account and gain access to administrator rights. For example, an attacker might misuse a function that runs under a sysdba, which could cause dangerous damage to the database. Next is denial of service attack. A denial of service attack is an attack meant to shut down a machine or network, making it inaccessible to the intended users. The concept is to send more traffic to a network address than the programmers have built the system to handle and paralyze the system. Next is unencrypted sensitive data in rest and in motion. Data in motion are most vulnerable than data in rest, but organizations should always keep any sensitive data in motion or in rest encrypted for database security purpose. Now we will come to DB vulnerability assessment process. We use many database vulnerability assessment tools in our organization, which are targeted to assess issues in different databases like SQL Server, Oracle, MySQL, etc. Today, we will discuss our experience with vulnerability assessment process using Security Center for SQL Server database engine and Azure SQL Server to analyze and resolve SQL Server vulnerabilities. The Security Center is available for all the following SQL databases: SQL Server database all supported version, Azure SQL database, Azure SQL managed instance, Azure Synapse Analytics, Parallel Data Warehouse. SQL database vulnerability assessment is performed to cover the following areas using Security Center. The areas are authentication, authorization, encryption, connection security, and auditing.
Yeah, thanks, Purvasha. I just like to add just 2-3 points here. Like why we are discussing Azure Security Center. I need to help you to understand why it is necessary. First of all, we are a Azure Microsoft Gold partner, and we have several gold competencies in analytics, data protections, data handling, application development. And Azure, we are an enterprise cloud service provider through Azure for last 6-7 years. But the concern is a different place. It's because why we are discussing little bit with Azure cloud, not on premises. As I said, like right now, earlier people used to keep the data on premises, but right now it's reverse because we feel more safe, more protected going into a cloud like Microsoft or Google or Amazon. They have more security features embedded, more compliance. So that's why as a Azure service provider, a gold partner, we follow Azure Security Center, which is new last 1 and 2 years. Microsoft has evolved to a certain level. When SQL Server 2009 is coming up, we also see that Azure Security Center is more powerful. And as I said, you will get more feature in Azure SQL database compared to an on-premises SQL Server. It's very interesting, and you please check that because there are always an idea that on-premises server has more features, cloud is less. But right now it has become reverse way because Azure SQL Server is more powerful than normal on-premises. One example I can give you, advanced threat protection. So the advanced threat protection is only available with Azure SQL Server, not in on-premises. And what it does, it actually tries to find out what are the hacking is happening, who is trying to access with different user access and role, and it tracks it and gives you more informations. But database assessment and protecting database is more than anything else today because of your machine learning, artificial intelligence, whatever you are doing, you need to have the data, but you need to have the data protected. Concept like CTD, transparent data encryptions, concept like always encryptions, concept like auditing, concept like row level protection. So earlier you have a user role level protection, but now you have row level protection. So you can design your database and table in such a way that 1000 rows have some information which you don't want a particular group to access. You want to protect 1000 rows only. So that is the level it is happening right now. It may come later that you will be having column level data protection. So I'm not aware of it, but this is the kind of progress is happening. And you need to understand why as a company, we are talking about Azure Security Center because it has everything what you need. And it is so easy. And you need to understand, you don't need to be a security expert. When you come to Azure Security Center, any manager, any developer can handle it. You don't need to have a certification. So that's so easy and comfortable for all of us. So that's the thing you need to understand. And Purvasha, we have a very short time, so I don't want to take any more minutes. Purvasha, please proceed with the database vulnerability assessment.
Yes, just go to next slide. Yeah. And this slide shows the dashboard of Azure Security Center. The upper section shows different KPI based on policy and compliance. The lower section shows Security Center hygiene, resource security hygiene. We will now discuss some of the features of Azure Security Center. Go to the next slide. Data discovery and classification feature provides the ability to discover, classify, label, and protect the sensitive data contained within your Azure SQL database. The classification engine performs scans against your database and identifies columns that contain sensitive data, providing a streamlined approach to review and apply the appropriate recommendations as provided by Azure Security Center. Labels can be applied to columns using the classification suggested through SQL engine and can be used for advanced sensitivity-based auditing and protection. As you can see the screenshot that 96 out of 342 columns are identified as confidential. Also 96 columns are distributed in different information type labels like financial, contact info, SSN, etc. This is very helpful for applying encryption rules on your sensitive data. Go to the next slide. Now we'll be discussing vulnerability assessment in Azure Security Center. The vulnerability assessment performs scan on the following categories and show recommendations on the security controls. Authentication assessment covers Windows authentication, SQL Server authentication, Azure AD authentication. Authorization assessment covers permissions, security by roles, restricting data access to selected data elements. Encryption, storing sensitive data assessment covers encrypting files, encrypting sources, column data, and key encryption. Connection security assessment covers firewall protection, encryption data in transit. Auditing recording access assessment covers automated auditing, custom audit, and compliance, etc. You can see in the image that this after scan, all vulnerabilities are listed in the column controls. The related potential scores, unhealthy resource list, and overall resource health are shown in the tabular format. If the vulnerabilities are remediated, it will be marked as completed, and the green portion of the bar graph in the resource health column will increase as it is shown for the implement security best practices row in the image. Now coming to the next slide, analyze, evaluate, and remediate vulnerabilities using Azure Security Center. The vulnerability report gives an initiation point to start the analysis, evaluation, and remediation of vulnerabilities. As per remediation steps recommended by Azure Security Center, we need to analyze and evaluate the project-specific security requirement to perform the actions. Some of the cases, the recommendation is a quick fix, like install endpoint protection on VMs. In this case, you can just click on the install link to install the endpoint protection on your VM and remediate the vulnerability. But there are cases where the recommendations needs analysis, like management ports should be closed on your VM. In this case, you need to evaluate and conclude if you can close all the management ports on the VM, or you need to keep some of them open and carefully use those for the need of your application. With this, we complete database vulnerability. Now we will discuss few important points on business logic vulnerability assessment. Business logic vulnerabilities are mainly the result of faulty application logic. These are specific to functionalities or operations of particular web application, and so they're extremely difficult to find automatically by application security testing tools or by any other automation testing tools. These types of tests require the security professionals to think a bit different and develop use cases, identifying areas where business logic vulnerabilities can cause a severe damage to the business. Types of business logic vulnerabilities mostly come from the process of authentication and authorization. Authentication vulnerabilities include weak password policy, absence of lockout mechanism, insecure password recovery, etc. Authorization vulnerabilities can be identified from the following: rule-based access control, horizontal privilege escalation, vertical privilege escalation, access control in multi-step process, context-dependent access control. Now come to next slide. We will discuss authentication and our approach. Authentication is the process that confirms a user identity. It's about validating the credentials like username, user ID, and password to verify your identity. Authentication plays significant role in business logic vulnerability assessment. We perform the following activities to confirm authentication has been implemented properly for the application. To evaluate the account lockout mechanism and stop brute force type of password guessing attacks, several use cases are developed to break the lockout mechanism and vulnerabilities are assessed. All combinations from password policy are checked thoroughly to ensure that implementation of strong password policy is there. Password expiration policy is also checked with history of previously used passwords as a part of a strong password policy. Security of forget password mechanism is checked thoroughly. Checking of prompts when user logged in from unknown device, that is also done. So this is our approach on authentication. Now we will discuss authorization types. Role-based access control, it's common in all modern enterprise to define RBAC, which is role-based access control, and to use the same for managing user permission and authorization to system resources. Vulnerability assessment should be done to make sure role-based access controls are implemented properly. Vertical privilege escalation. If an user can gain access to functionality that they are not permitted to access, then this is vertical privilege escalation. For example, in any project, if a non-administrative user can gain access to an admin page where they can delete user accounts or perform some other administrative functions, then this is vertical privilege escalation. Horizontal privilege escalation arises when a user is able to gain access to resources belonging to another user with similar level of access privileges. For example, suppose an application allows multiple corporate entities with their own structure and staffs. The admin user of company A will have same and equal rights that the admin user of company B is having. But as per application tenant policy, company A cannot access data of company B. Now, because of business logic vulnerability, if admin user of company A can access data of company B, then this is horizontal privilege escalation. Access control in multi-step process, what it is meant. Many web portals implemented important functions using a series of steps. This is often done when a variety of inputs or options needed to be captured, or when a user needs to review and confirm details before the action is performed. For example, if admin approves user identity, demographic, and financial details in 3 different steps, authorization could be found broken only for step 2 and properly implemented for step 1 and 3. So this is all about access control in multi-step process. Then context-dependent access control. This access control restricts access to functionality and resources based upon the state of application of user interaction with it. Context-dependent access control prevents a user performing an action in wrong order. For example, buyer cannot modify items in the order bucket after the payment is completed. So now coming to the next slide, authorization, our approach. We perform following activities to confirm authorization has been implemented properly for the application. First, we create role versus permission matrix to enumerate the roles that can be provisioned, to explore the permissions allowed to be applied to the objects. You can refer the sample matrix provided in the table, right-hand side of the presentation. Unauthorized access checks are performed in admin pages with non-admin user login. Alteration and hijacking of session cookies are used in multiple combinations to check unauthorized access. Rigorous checks are performed on the application pages and modules using different level of users to confirm vertical or horizontal privilege escalations are not evident. Multi-step access control and context-dependent access control are also thoroughly checked as and when required. Also, we recommend a few mitigation strategies like unless a resource is intended to be accessible by public, always deny access by default. use of a single application-wide mechanism for enforcing access controls, implement audit on access controls to ensure expected behavior. Now come to the next slide. Here we will be discussing the overall business logic vulnerability assessment approach. As we discussed earlier, that it is very difficult to identify business logic vulnerabilities through web application scanner or any other automation tools. Because business logic is always unique for every business, and generic web scanning application can cover web vulnerabilities, automation tools can cover functional issues in the application, but no such option is available to assess business logic vulnerabilities. We found a solution of the above problem with a new approach for business logic vulnerability assessment. For the initial review and analysis, manual effort, experience, and expertise are required to develop use cases, which are used to create the process automation workflow. The workflow is used in the assessment then. Once the workflow is ready, the vulnerability assessment and report generation become very simple for anyone. Vulnerability in business logic can be assessed anytime in an affordable cost using our solution. In the business logic review and analysis phase, process review, analysis, and brainstorming sessions are done to prepare use cases required for the business logic vulnerability assessment, which includes identification and ranking of each business process according to its importance and sensitivity. We also create some negative scenarios to break the conventional business flows. In the next step, business logic vulnerability use cases are decomposed and serialized, which is essential for the depth and coverage of business logic with multiple combinations of users and scenarios. Most of the cases, the scenarios are repetitive. To reduce time and risk of human errors, we have automated the business logic vulnerability assessment use cases using our process automation suite. The workflows are created using Python script, RPA, etc. as per business process need. The above mentioned process enables us to assure customers with business logic security for a complex application, maybe approx 150 pages with multi-layer of privileges within a minimum turnaround time. And the modular approach of this process is easy to execute after every release with no or minimal manual effort. So that's all from my end. Thanks again for your patience. Now my colleague Shruti will demonstrate a small process automation workflow used for authorization check. Over to you, Shruti.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Purvasha, for the detailed explanation of the security vulnerabilities. Hope everyone in the audience got an idea about the different security vulnerabilities we have. Now let's see a practical demo on the automation flow of two of the important business logic vulnerabilities. Before I start, let me reiterate on what are these two business logic vulnerabilities we are going to have a demo on. The first one is the horizontal privilege escalation. Horizontal privilege escalation arises when a user is able to gain access to resources belonging to another user in addition to their own resources. For example, suppose an application allows multiple corporate entities with their own structure and staff. The admin user of company A will have the same and equal rights of the admin user of company B. But as per the application policy, company A should not have access to the data of company B. If the admin of company A can access the data of company B, then this is the horizontal privilege escalation. And next is the vertical privilege escalation. If a user can gain access to a functionality that they are not permitted to access, then this is a vertical privilege escalation. For example, in any project, if a non-administrative user can gain access to an admin page where they can delete a user account or perform any action which is only a privilege for admin user, then this can be called a vertical privilege escalation. Before I start the demo, let me tell you that due to the security reasons, many options and pages in the website we have used in the demo are deliberately kept hidden. And this website is only for the demo purpose. In our project, we have used a process automation tool for the automation of these two flows. But the fact is, you can use any tool or any in-house coding for such automation. Considering the time and connectivity, we have recorded the automation flow. But if anyone is interested in this automation, they can contact us and we can even give a live demo on the same. Now let me start the demo. Here first we are showing the horizontal privilege escalation. First we have to log into a web application using a Chrome browser with admin user of company A. In the left panel, you can see the privileges of the admin user of company A. He can access the user management page. Now we have to log in, go to the user management page. Here we can see that there are two users under this admin. Here we are going to the application option and trying to copy the cookies, the ASPX auth, .aspx auth and ASP.NET session ID. Also we have to, can you pause the video please? Also we have copied the URL from the previous session. Next we have opened the same URL using Mozilla Firefox and log in with a different admin user of a different company. Here we can see in the left pane that this admin also has the same privileges of the previous admin. He also has the access to the user management page. Yeah, please continue. We are again going to the user management page. And here we can see that there's only one user under this admin. What we are doing, we are pasting all the 3 cookies which we have copied from the previous session and pasting it here. Also, we are pasting the URL which we have copied from the previous session. And refreshing the page. The result is the page is inaccessible. Pause the video, please. Yeah. If this page was accessible for the second user, if the second admin user of the company 2 can access the page of the company admin user of company A, that is a horizontal privilege escalation. But in this application, we have taken care of this security vulnerability. So that is the reason we can say that the page is not accessible. Please continue. Pause it, please. Okay, continue, please. Yeah, we are signing out from the page. Next is a vertical privilege escalation. Here we are logging into the application with admin of company A. We can see in the left pane that escrow statement is a privilege for admin user only. We are going to the escrow statement page. Again, copying the same 3 cookies which we copied previously from this page. The ASPX auth, .aspx auth and ASPS.NET session ID. Also copied the URL. And we are next logging in a different browser with a non-admin user, which doesn't have a privilege for escrow statement. We are going to the dashboard page and trying to paste all the 3 cookies which we copied from the admin user. the URL is pasted. But as this user doesn't have the privilege for that page, we can see the page is inaccessible here also. Pause, please. Okay. So if we can see that if that particular second user was able to, go to the escrow statement page, that means that is a vertical privilege escalation. Here also we have the reports generated in test Excel sheet format. So these are the two types of vulnerability we have covered in this demo. Hope I could add a bit of idea about these two vulnerabilities with these examples. Once again, I would like to thank everyone for joining this webinar. That's all from me. Over to you, Abhijit. Thanks once again.
Thank you. Thank you, Shruti. Thank you very much. So, we have a very small amount of time. 1 hour is still small to cover up the entire topic. It's so vast and it's so many things to talk about. So, but this is just the beginning. As a company, we are here. Our informations are with you. The website, Amy's contact number, everything will be given to you. Even the recording will be uploaded. But let's have a quick Q&A sessions. You may have any questions for us. And now I'm handing over to Amy. Amy, could you please conduct the Q&A session?
Yes. Thank you everyone for your questions. So Preetha and Joydeep are on the panel to answer today. Preetha, the first one is appropriate for you. Which are the high priority vulnerabilities in web applications?
So first of all, hello everyone, this is Preetha Mukherjee. To answer this question, I would say the security vulnerability of a web application are generally prioritized depending on their exploitability, detectability, and the impact that is there on the software. But out of this, the most common important security vulnerabilities, which are also defined by OWASP, are like SQL injections, broken authentications, you have cross-site scripting, insufficient logging and monitoring, broken access control. These are the few of them.
Great. Thank you, Preetha.
Thank you.
Joydeep, this one I will give to you. Can all business logic vulnerability areas be covered using process automation?
Good question. So the answer is mostly yes. But again, I mean, like Purvasha said before in the presentation, so if it's a small application, they suppose if it's containing a single page, a couple of pages, limited features, limited functionalities, you can choose to not do an automation because it will sort of incur a lot of time being consumed into developing the automation solution. Instead, you can do it manually. Now, if it's a big application, if it's a big web application with hundreds of pages, many features, many functionalities, then it's really a prudent idea that you go for automation. The first time when you're going for it, there's no other choice but to do manual assessment. But then for subsequent iterations, it's really important that automation route be followed, right? So that's the answer. I mean, the majority of the cases, what we sort of involve in, we go for automation when we go for subsequent iterations, but the first iteration generally is the manual one.
Perfect. Thank you, Joydeep. Preetha, another one for you. Why should we use Rapid7 and ZAP both in web vulnerability assessment?
Well, honestly, we don't need to use both the tools. Either one of it is fine. But here in the demonstration, we just showed you with the two tools. We generally start with manually reviewing a few common list of checks on the given application. Then we can use the ZAP tool because it's effective to capture the basic vulnerabilities like the absence of anti-CSRF token, the cross-site scripting, the content header issues, and many are there. once that is done, we can go into with more robust tools like the Rapid7 or the SOAP UI tools for API security testing, and there are a couple of other tools, but either one is fine. We don't
Yeah.
need to use both the tools.
And moreover, ZAP is free, open source.
Yes.
Yep.
Great. I think we have time for one more question. Joydeep, another one for you.
Yep.
How do you determine vulnerability assessment frequency?
Again, it depends, right? So, it basically we decide in consultation with the business and the product team, right? So certain products or certain projects might have, a criticality which requires it to be assessed every couple of weeks, 2 weeks or 3 weeks, right? It's advisable otherwise that you do a frequency, you follow a frequency of 1 month. And there are a couple of, compliance issues which require you also to do compliance assessment tests as well, very frequently. So like I said, I mean, as you can understand, you have to decide on a case-by-case basis. If your project requires and it's critical enough, go for a more frequent one. If it's not the case, go for a monthly or a quarterly one.
And can we help decide on frequency for our clients? Is that part of our services? Just to give you an idea.
We advise, and it's on majorly it's something that the business decides. And we sort of give them advice that, yes, this is something that it should be done. More importantly, if you are going for feature developments, feature enhancements, it's really advisable strongly that you go for as frequent as possible the vulnerability assessment test.
Yeah, I just want to add that, especially in the government, when they have a security team, they have a compliance SLA in place. So they tell us like 3 months you have to run the vulnerability assessment. But they are concerned like they don't have any security team. So normally there we go, we propose the timeline and frequency.
Yep.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we're right at 12 o'clock. Thank you everyone for joining. Again, we'll respond to any inquiries we did not address on the live webinar today via email. In the meantime, please feel free to reach out with any additional questions. Watch for our next webinars coming up in our automation series. Enjoy the rest of your day, stay safe, and visit us at datacoresystems.com and datacoreautomation.com to see more on these and other automation and service offerings. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you all. Bye.